I grew up, in Hawaii, where you wouldn't see very many people on the street. And all of a sudden, around 2005, there was an explosion of people on beaches, in parks, on sidewalks. Policy solutions started to tilt more and more toward criminalizing being homeless. The frustration took on a new level. And so where are we today? I think the data shows we aren't that different than we were a decade ago. We still have among the highest rates of houselessness in the country. We have a lot of people working really hard in a system of social services and homeless services provision, but that system's struggling. And I think you asked about kind of what's working or resource allocation. And I think the current system really misses two parts of the problem. The first is it ignores the economic reality that there's just, in a market-based system of housing and land, there is no space for many of our people. If you have any kind of challenge in your life that limits your income and earning potential, whether that's a physical disability, a mental health challenge, an addiction, a past incarceration, limited education, or just experiencing a life crisis, a tough time in your life, there's no space for you. There's too little space that people can actually afford. And so, with that reality as the backdrop, our system of homeless services outreach and provision focuses on quickly pushing people into shelter as a first step to what is supposed to be a path toward permanent housing or bringing people home. But you can't do that and ignore the bigger picture that there is no housing at the end of that. We are pushing people into a dead end or a revolving door. So that's what's happened to a lot of the people who have attempted to use the shelter system is, most folks, including myself, before I started to build these relationships, didn't realize that shelters have time limits. You have about 90 days. And if you haven't found permanent housing at the end of that, you might be discharged from a shelter back out onto the street. Most people on the street today have been through a shelter at least once, and probably more than one shelter more than one time.
Honestly, I never realized what I was doing was that important. Yeah, showing somebody a little love. And I didn't realize that the love took them a long way. Because I couldn't find love in my own home. I found love on the streets. And I kind of understood that when the people started coming. I didn't realize how huge and how big this houselessness is until I moved down to the Waianae area. Then I realized we had all these people out on the street, but one day I was one of those people too on the streets. Whenever anybody would come and sit down with me, I would always make sure I give them an ear, just so somebody is listening to them. You don't know where they would be at if you're not there. Or what they would be thinking. It's a huge mission we have. It doesn't only bring me on the anxieties. It makes me think about solutions. It makes me think about what the next steps we need to take. How to approach things. Just to be accounted for. Just to be accounted and be accepted for being someone means a whole lot. It took me years to keep my head up, because many years I kept my head down because I was houseless. Still not understanding that what I was doing was actually one big thing in showing somebody else love, is showing somebody else compassion, understanding things that people was lacking in their life because of the choices they would choose. So I'm blessed to even being there and just to be a witness for them, to help them get to the next level. I'm excited that we'll be able to give people a forever home. I'm excited. Today I don't have only one summa cum laude. I have two that graduated among my kids. I'm more excited that I see a lot of people in our village healing today. Recognizing how they can be of use, how they can help the next person, how they can identify a situation and turn that into a solution. I just can't wait to bring everybody home.
I wrote about Uncle John in that piece because I asked him a question. I asked him why he refers to himself as houseless instead of homeless. And this is something I'd heard from a lot of people before, because obviously home can mean a lot more than a house. But when I asked Uncle John that question, he just looked at me and he said, I will never be homeless in Hawaii. Hawaii is the place of my ancestors. I have family here. I have culture here. I have the Aina. So for me, his answer was especially powerful because it reminds us that here in Hawaii, Kanaka Maoli, Native Hawaiians have a claim to belonging and a claim to home that's rooted in this genealogical connection to Aina, and also in unrelinquished claims to lands that were stolen from the Hawaiian people. So even when they're deprived of a house, their belonging to Aina and their sense of home is something that can't be taken away. And that really made me reflect on how in Hawaii, we have this beautiful history and long history of Hawaiians and settlers forming Puʻuhonua out of displacement and then standing to protect the Aina that gave them refuge and gave them a safe place for healing.
Hui Aloha and the amount of outreach and the weekly visits had helped us so much. It gave us a sense of being human again. You know, it allowed us all to start realizing that we're not what media would paint us out to be, you know, as vagrants on the side of the road, you know, or a dirty mess. You know, it gave us the sense of belonging and rehumanizing us once again. You know, we're just people just trying to live. You know, a lot of us are not out there by choice, you know, as I can only speak for myself and my situation. Like, I ended up out on the street personally because I had lost my job due to a lack of proper childcare. I couldn't go to work because I couldn't find somebody, you know, responsible enough to take care of my 2-month-old baby at the time. So I lost my job, which in turn I lost my home. And it wasn't my choice to lose my home. I just couldn't afford it anymore. And it was, you know, what do I do? What do I do? And basically that's how I ended up on the street. And for a great time being, I would feel this small. I mean, literally like an inch tall is how I felt at first. But when I started, you know, when I found Kaka'ako, when I found a place there and the sense of belonging, the sense of love, and then Hui Aloha just helped enhance that even more by keeping us connected and you know, with a little bit of guidance and a little bit of advice and inspiration here and there, we literally grew. And even till today, I'm housed now, like as you shared, I'm housed now, but I know that, you know, Kaka'ako, Po'e O Kaka'ako has literally become my ohana. You know, we may not be blood related, but they're still my family.
The main case that, if anyone needs to know, is a case called Martin versus Boise, city of Boise. And it's a case that came out of the Ninth Circuit. And basically it's a case that says that the Eighth Amendment, which is weird because you don't usually think of the Eighth Amendment as something involving homelessness or houselessness, is that the Eighth Amendment prohibits, you know, cruel and unusual punishment, right? And what that case says is that it is cruel and unusual to punish someone who is houseless. And it's wrong, it's constitutionally wrong. And so every so often, you know, these judges get pretty eloquent. And one thing that, and this is a quote from the case, and I'm gonna paraphrase it to a certain extent. And what they say in Martin versus Boise is that sitting and lying and resting and sleeping is a universal and unavoidable consequence of being human. So Lindsay, you're human, you're always human, you're human at every point in your life. All of you, everyone who has houses, they're all human at every single point in their lives. And it doesn't matter whether you have an addiction, or what doesn't matter if you fail to pay your rent, you're still human. We are all human.